Hello and welcome to TVS Correspondent, the show where we take a look at what's happening in the US and around the world. I am Radzi Ahmad, and with me is our correspondent for the United States of America, who is now in Washington, D.C., Alfian Zaidi. Alfian, always a pleasure to have you here.
Likewise, pleasure is mine too, Razzie.
All right, great. Well, it has been over a year since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Devastation all across the world, multiple countries' healthcare systems collapsing or on the brink of collapsing, nearing 200 million infections and over 4 million deaths. Hope was ignited with the arrival of the vaccines, and some countries have begun to recover. But what about those people who were infected with COVID-19? Is it a one and done deal? Do they get off scot-free after they've recovered? Well, most with mild to moderate COVID-19 symptoms would usually recover within 2 to 3 weeks after symptom onset. However, a small but significant number of individuals tend to experience persistent symptoms beyond 4 weeks after developing COVID-19. The symptoms that people experience after this acute phase are collectively known as long COVID. Alfian, could you explain what long COVID actually is and its symptoms?
Sure. For many who were diagnosed with COVID-19, the battle does not end when they no longer test positive. Long COVID occurs in people who continue to experience COVID symptoms long after they have recovered from that illness. Surveys of thousands of people have revealed that many long haulers experience the same symptoms they had during their initial fight with COVID 19, such as fatigue, cognitive impairment, or brain fog, difficulty breathing, headaches, difficulty exercising, depression, sleep difficulty, and loss of the sense of taste or smell. And with severe COVID infections, they either experience some permanent damage to their lungs, heart, kidneys, or brain, or continue to experience lingering symptoms despite no detectable damage to these organs.
Well, I've seen a few stories of people really struggling with their daily lives due to these debilitating symptoms. And it's really heartbreaking knowing that they've once beaten the virus, yet there they are, unable to even walk properly or do the things they used to do. Which brings me to ask, just how many people are affected by long COVID?
Um, an increasing number of studies in the United States find that greater than one fourth of patients have developed some forms of long COVID. In other words, 25% of COVID 19 patients experienced new health problems well after their initial diagnosis. For some symptoms have now continued for many months with no apparent end in sight, with many survivors fearing that they will simply have to adjust to a new normal. More and more sufferers have not been able to return to work even months after their initial illness. While the number of patients with persistent illness remains undetermined this early in the pandemic, estimates suggest that millions of Americans may enter the ranks of the permanently disabled. The UK Office of National Statistics, ONS, found that more than 1 in 10 people who became infected with SARS-CoV-2 have gone on to get long COVID. If the UK prevalence is applicable elsewhere, that's more than 16 million people worldwide, Razzie.
That seems to be quite a significant portion of the population. Do scientists know which group of people are most at risk of contracting long COVID?
Oh, that's the issue. It's less certain who is most at risk and why it affects only some people. The condition seems to be more common in women than in men. In another ONS analysis, 23% of women and 19% of men still had symptoms 5 weeks after infection. If you're male and get COVID, you're more likely to get to go to hospital and you're more likely to die. Yet, if you survive, actually, it's females that are much more likely to get the ongoing symptoms. There is also a distinctive age distribution. According to the ONS, again, long COVID is most common in middle-aged people between 35 and 49 years old. And although long COVID is rarer in younger people, that does not mean it's absent. Even for children aged 2 to 11, the ONS estimates that 9.8% of those who test positive for the virus still have symptoms after at least 5 weeks, reinforcing the suggestion from other studies that children can get long COVID as well. Uh, so far, age and sex are surprisingly powerful for identifying people at risk, but many uncertainties remain, Radzi.
Well, that's a good start, I guess. If you can at least identify who are the people most at risk, then we can have a better chance at proactively preventing more people from contracting long COVID. Well, we'll be right back on TVS Correspondent, where we'll discuss what causes long COVID and how it could affect our society. So stay tuned. And we're back on TVS Correspondent with more on long COVID. Alfian, it seems that like this issue needs to be looked into urgently, seeing as it affects a significant minority of the population, and that could cause severe ramifications for society heading into the future. So, what do the leading medical experts in the U.S. say about long COVID? Do they know what causes it, why it happens?
Well, one of the many mysteries surrounding long COVID is what causes the condition. Dr. Hyung Chun, an associate professor of medicine at Yale School of Medicine, said uh, the current belief is that it's caused by a combination of widespread inflammation along with injury to the organs. Research has found that levels of inflammatory markers in blood correlate to how severe the disease was, suggesting that more serious cases are more likely to lead to inflammation that could cause lingering symptoms. But on the other hand, Chen says even people who had mild COVID-19 symptoms also experience lasting effects. The bottom line is there is a lot we don't know about long COVID. It's difficult to track, and our ability to manage it is limited by our understanding, actually, Razi.
It's also unfortunate that there is currently no drug treatment available for long COVID. We can only manage the symptoms. But what about vaccines, though, Alfian? Surely vaccines could provide some relief for long COVID patients.
Yeah, the good news is that it was discovered that vaccines seem to provide relief for some long COVID patients. According to Akiko Iwasaki, a professor of immunobiology at Yale School of Medicine, as many as 30 to 40% of those who get the vaccine have reported improvements to their symptoms. They no longer have brain fog. Their stomach problems have gone away, and they stop suffering from shortness of breath.
Do they know why the vaccines make them feel better?
Iwasaki says it's possible that the vaccine is helping the immune system fight off residual virus lingering in their bodies and clearing these remnants away. But at this point, researchers can only hypothesize, and there's still a lot to learn.
Indeed, we have a lot to learn still. But say we could not see a possible solution in the foreseeable future and long COVID gets out of hand. Now, what are the underlying impacts on society and the economy, Alfian?
First of all, Razi, severe cases of long COVID could cause long-term disabilities in a person. Uh, in addition to the personal suffering, long-term disability comes with a staggering price tag, including increased healthcare costs, reduction or loss of employment, and economic strain on workers' compensation and disability support programs. It's been estimated that as much as 30% of the COVID health burden could arise from COVID-induced disability. If America ends up with 1 million people with ongoing symptoms that are debilitating, that is a tremendous burden for each of these individuals, but also for the healthcare system and society. According to the Scientific American, current US disability programs appear ill-equipped to deal with this new stream of patients with chronic disability. Patients and employers alike can be overwhelmed by the inherent bureaucracy of the system, including workers' compensation, social security disability, and private disability insurance. But we cannot be short-sighted. Barriers to disability support can worsen the severity of the medical problems and prolong the time in which patients are unable to return to their normal activities. It's understandable that we don't yet have all the issues related to COVID-associated disability figured out. We haven't fully grasped all the implications of this disease. After all, since early 2020, we've been struggling to address the immediate crisis and how to deal with these new problems that arise day by day. But the time has come to proactively plan for what will certainly be the enormous new impact that long haul COVID will have on our society. Radzi.
Yes, we still have a long road ahead of us to properly address COVID and long COVID. Well, science, policy, and society as a whole seems to acknowledge and deal with the immediate impacts of crises such as COVID-19 much better than the long-term subsequent effects such as long COVID. This is a time to be rigorous and compassionate, and not just when it comes to COVID-19, but also future pandemics and other neglected chronic conditions. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Alfian, as always, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Radzi. Take care, everyone.
All right, you take care. And stay tuned to TVS Correspondent next week for more updates in the United States. Stay safe and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.